Welcome to the Misophonia podcast. This is season 6, episode 17. My name's Adil Ahmad, and I have Misophonia. This week I talked to Lauren, a freelance graphic designer in Florida. This is Lauren's first conversation with someone who understands misophonia, which is always a special occasion. We talk about the wedge that was caused growing up between herself and her parents, relationships, having friends and partners who trigger her on purpose, the effects of anxiety medication on misophonia, and looking back at how misophonia put her in some really dark places growing up. As always, let me know what you think. You can reach me by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or hit me up on Instagram or Facebook at Misophonia Podcast. And if you haven't already, leave a quick review or rating wherever you listen to the show. It helps drive us up in the algorithms. And thanks for our ongoing support from Patreon supporters. You can contribute there by going to patreon.com/Misophonia Podcast. All right, let's get to my conversation with Lauren. Lauren, welcome to the podcast. Good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So, I usually ask the usual question, kind of whereabouts are you located?
I'm in Ocala. It's Florida. So I grew up in Miami, Florida, and now I'm in Ocala.
Gotcha. Okay. How's it weather-wise over there these days? You probably get that asked all the time.
Normally not too bad. We just had a hurricane, and it just
Right. No, everyone's heard about that. So I was wondering how far away from that you were.
yeah, we got pretty lucky. We were supposed to be like directly hit, and then it kind of turned a little and kind of missed us just a little bit. So we only got some rain and wind. It wasn't too bad.
Okay. Good. All right. Yeah. Well, I guess. And then kind of what do you do around there for a living or school? I'm not even sure.
So I'm a designer. Right now I'm freelancing. So I'm really just like my own boss, if you will, right
Mm-hmm.
now. Yeah, that's what I'm doing, just freelancing for design. I'm a graphic designer.
Yeah. Were you always freelancing, or were you ever working in a
Oh
company in
no.
an office and all that noise stuff?
Oh yeah, I just spent the last 2 years in a studio actually working with just a few people, but enough that I'm definitely enjoying working on my own, I would say.
Did you venture out because you're like, I can't take this anymore, or?
Um, well, it actually kind of worked in my favor.
Mm-hmm.
I was let go with like 12 other people for budget cut purposes,
Mm-hmm.
but yes, the noises were definitely getting to me. It was a chill environment, so it was like anybody can eat anytime they want.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it wasn't my favorite to say the least.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And so it sounds like the usual kinds of triggers, the whole mouth eating kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Um. Well, I guess yeah. Then maybe let's rewind all the way back to kind of like as far as back as you can remember. Like, what was it like growing up?
Very difficult. And I mean, it honestly, it's really been a really dark and lonely experience for me, as I'm sure others can relate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a twin, and growing up, it was kind of like I was the one with the issues, if you will. Um,
Mm.
yeah,
So
and
you're being shamed, I would imagine, maybe because I'm assuming your twin does not have misophonia.
yeah, I was kind of just like the the weirder one, I guess. Like it was just like, oh, she has this thing, and it always kind of made me distance myself from like the family and everything.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
So how did you remember kind of around when it started and what the circumstances were?
yeah. I remember I was I was definitely young enough because I was sitting on my mom's lap when I first discovered that I had this. I don't remember much. I just remember I was sitting in her lap and like my ear was like close to her mouth and I could just like hear everything and I was like, what is that? And yeah, I'd say probably like for everyone else, probably like 10
Yeah.
between, yeah, so maybe younger, maybe like 8, I don't know, but yeah.
Do you remember anything unusual around the house or in your life that happened around that time that maybe caused extra stress or anything unusual?
Well, my parents did go through like a divorce around that time, so
Hmm.
that was definitely a stressful time.
Yeah. And how did you and your twin get along around that time?
Pretty well. I was gonna say pretty well, but I mean,
Yeah.
um, we get along now a lot. I think we fought a little during, back then. Um,
Sure.
yeah, but it wasn't too bad. It wasn't really anything like miso related that
Yeah.
we would
Yeah.
fight over. Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, then maybe I mean after the time you remember with your mom, did things start to just progress? Did you just keep noticing sounds after that day?
Yeah, it really just went downhill after that. I like just could not shake it after that. I was like, I hear everything. And it was the hardest part for me was I didn't like know it at the time or put it together or anything, but like, my mom is like a marijuana user and that's just like, whatever. But I don't know. I'm sure others, like people know what I'm talking about. Like people who like smoke marijuana, they get like dry mouth.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't know how to explain what I was like feeling, but it's like I vividly remember getting this anxiety like every single night because my mom would come into my room and like kind of like lay down like in my bed to like, kiss me goodnight, whatever. And that's like supposed to be this like nice moment, but I would just turn into this like little like asshole, if you will. And I would just be like, and all I could say was, "You're making the noise." That was all I would say. I just kept saying, "You're making the noise." And I
Mm,
would like freak out and like push her off of me. Like, and I just didn't know what this was or like how to even explain it. And all I could say was, "You're making the noise." And she was like, "What noise?" And I was just like, I don't know. It was so frustrating because I just couldn't, I had no idea. But
how did yeah? I mean, how did that progress? Like, how did she react? Like, it couldn't have been the same thing every night. At some point, she must have either tried to be accepting or maybe got bad. Started to get mad and shaming you. Like, how did that? How did people react to that?
um, I think I've actually kind of blocked a lot of it out by now.
Mm,
I just know that it 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 forced like a wedge between me and my mom, especially like in those moments. Like I think she just kind of learned to distance herself. She just didn't even allow herself to get too close because it was like, what is wrong with my kid? Like I get close to her and she freaks out.
yeah, I mean, close physically, but also maybe close emotionally as well.
Yeah, definitely. Because
Yeah,
she
yeah.
just couldn't even understand, and it wasn't her fault. Like I couldn't even explain it at the time.
How was your? Oh, was your dad around at that time as well?
Yeah, he was. And both of my parents are, like a bunch of the other podcasts that I listen to for the other ones. Like my parents are definitely my biggest triggers for sure. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
they
we're yeah, we know all about
right.
about that. Yeah, unfortunately. How did your dad react to you?
um,
I'm assuming you had similar reactions there.
yeah, my dad's kind of like he'll like make jokes out of uncomfortable situations. That's just how he like copes with things, I guess. And
Hmm.
I'm not gonna, go as far to say like, and even to this day, but he doesn't like make fun of misophonia, but he'll just be like there was this like dinosaur show on at the time and it was called like Mesopotamia and
Hmm.
like to this day he'll literally be like lore Mesopotamia and like try to like make jokes out of it and he's like, do you still have that thing, do you that Mesopotamia thing, you still have that? And he just like jokes about it,
Yeah.
and which is like not my favorite. um
Yeah, we do get we seem to be the whipping boy of mental health conditions. It's
Yeah,
just
right?
like it's just trivialized and diminished and just shrugged off. Um, Interesting. Okay, and those aren't even funny jokes. I have to say, like,
I
like
know, right?
humor is a good coping mechanism. I was like, ooh, I would have had maybe some respect if it was kind of funny. No offense, Dad, if you're listening, but uh, we do like humor, but maybe I bet you could probably work on it. Anyways, okay, so yeah, okay, interesting. So, well, what about your sister in this mix? Then, how was she? She must have observed you, her twin. Um, you guys are probably similar in many ways, but this thing obviously must have been like way out there. How was she reacting?
So I will say my sister was and has been like the most understanding and respectful about it. Even though she, especially growing up when I didn't even know what was going on, she really had no idea. But I think she almost felt like protective over it because like
Hmm.
I would be like dying, just like, you know, losing it, like at the table. And she would just, she could tell. And um, that being said, though, I think it's definitely something I regret because, like, telling her so much about it to try to make her understand because it's almost like she has it now because she looks out for it so much and she's told that to me before. She's expressed it. She's like, I feel like everyone bothers me now, and it's not just like bothers, but to a certain extent, I think she like looks out for things that would bother me as a way to like protect me, like when we're together. And then she gets like really aggravated by everybody like eating and like the movies and stuff. She'll get like so mad and be
Hmm.
like, "Oh, everyone's eating around us. Can you believe that?" And like, when normally she wouldn't even notice. Yeah.
Did that start to happen just recently in the last few years, months?
I
Like
think the
her,
last
yeah.
a long time, a really long time, and
Mm,
I think it made her almost like resent our parents in a way because like my mom would be like, just so obviously like just have like the driest mouth and she'd be talking to us and then I would like look at my sister like, see, like you hear it? And she's like, yeah, I do hear it. Like, oh my God. And so then she would
mm,
I think it built this like I think I just honestly like I just feel like I drove wedges between everybody because of this. I don't know.
mm. It's interesting, just yeah, about your sister because misophonia is sometimes thought of as an overactive. I'm making up my own words here, but a kind of an overactive defense mechanism trying to protect you from a phantom danger
Right.
or something that may have happened, like whether something specific that happened or some chronic stress that happened early on in your life where you weren't fully, I don't know, supported emotionally. So it's interesting that, um, I mean, it kind of intuitively might make sense where now your sister is taking on that role of protecting you, and maybe she is now being overly sensitive to sounds and maybe full on picking up misophonia.
Yeah.
Um, So, um, well, actually, maybe yeah. Let me talk about the kind of the because yeah, as you probably know, a common theme that shows up is the distance and wedging between um, the misophone and other family members. Obviously, with the parents, like, um, did they ever express their frustration with you? Did they ever like show it in ways? I don't know, like staying. Well, you said like, staying away with you at night, but like how did but how did they express it, and how did that make you feel? Because a lot of us also have that kind of guilt that kind of builds up. Um, was that part of your experience growing up?
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. I felt guilty at all times.
Because we
Um
don't want this, this would be clear, right? I mean, we we don't want
right.
misophonia. We're
Right.
not choosing to. I mean, there, people growing up. We obviously, even people without misophonia will try to, be sometimes assholes with their parents. But this is a whole other thing. We don't want this.
Right.
So
Like I
there's
didn't
that.
ask for this.
Yeah, yeah. This is like a whole other level. So, yeah. So, how did I don't did they ever express um that they were upset, that this was did they ever notice that this was causing a wedge, or did it just kind of happen naturally, something you noticed?
Um, well, it was, I think, like a natural, like steady progression of like a
Mm-hmm.
wedge. I do think, well, there were times when individually they both expressed how it made them feel. Specifically, I remember my mom was like getting dressed or something for her birthday party, and she was like really stressed. And I walked in the bathroom and I said something and like to ask her something, and she was like chewing gum like it was nobody's business. And she was like talking to me, and I just, I was like, I'm not focusing on anything you're saying. And I would just was like, can you please spit the gum out? Like I'm talking to you. And she just like snipped at me and was like, this is my room, it's my birthday, I can chew gum if I want, like that's your problem. And she was
Mm-hmm.
like, and I was like, well, I can't talk to you like if you're gonna chew gum like that. And she was like, then don't talk to me then, I guess you're gonna have to deal with that. And I was like, okay. um, that's one
Mm-hmm.
memory I specifically have with her. And then my dad, um, something I think about almost every day. It rings around my head. He like sat me down one day and he was like, Lauren, you have this thing, but the world doesn't owe you anything. And he was like, nobody owes you anything. People are allowed to chew, people are allowed to make noise, and they're not going to feel bad about it, and you can't make them feel bad about it. Like this is just something you're going to have to pretty much deal with on your own for the rest of your life, and really nobody has to help you with this. Nobody has to accommodate to you. And he was like, just remember that, like nobody owes you anything because of this. And I was like, okay. And that really stuck with me. um
So yeah, I mean, which reminds me of another thing. Like we get all that. We know that the problem lies with us. In most cases, obviously, if somebody's going to be obnoxiously making noises, that's one thing. But um, yeah, it's funny that people think that we are, um, I don't know, being too aggravated. Like we choose to be or aggravated um, by, like, I don't know, slightly askew manners, but this is something that's within us that we can't really control,
right.
and it sends us to, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, it sends us to 100. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, this is it's like we know that other people are the world is not going to revolve around us.
Yeah.
That's the funny part. Um, did what about at school and whatnot? Did things start to trigger you at school?
Yes. I can say confidently, I think this just made school so much worse for me in every
Mm,
single way. Like I even will go as far to say I think my grades suffered because of this. Like I could never pay attention,
mm, hmm.
I couldn't. I just couldn't do it. Like I just ripped my hair out every day. And um
Did you
I
try to wear earplugs or anything? Or
yeah, eventually, um in high school, I want to say it was like 11th grade, I had a psychology teacher, and I was like, listen, and that's actually when I found out. I think it was like maybe 10th grade of high school
mm-hmm,
when I found out that this was finally there was a term for it, and like it was an
mm-hmm.
actual condition and all that. And so I told my psychology teacher about it, and I remember I had like a whole printout about it, and I was like, if you don't believe me, look, this is real. And like I showed her a whole like packet about it. And so I was like, is it okay if I just wear these headphones? They're noise canceling. I'm not even gonna be listening to music. And she let me. She was the only. I asked another teacher, and she said no. And I was like, okay, but
And you gave that teacher the same packet of information?
yeah. And she was like, no, I cannot have you listening to headphones. And I was like, well, I won't be listening to music. But she basically was like, if I let you wear headphones, when's it going to stop?
Oh
Everyone else
God.
is going to want to wear headphones. But I was like, okay, well, it's not the same, but all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Classic.
Yeah. School was awful. And I remember there was this one kid, Jake, who sat next to me, and he was just like, he was just the worst. Like, the
Jakes
worst.
are usually the worst,
The
but
worst. Yeah. And yeah, and I finally got the courage and because he would it was like every day it was like his routine. It was like right after lunch he would take the gum out, offer to everybody, like that was just his thing. And he put like three pieces of gum in his mouth at once, and I was just like, I want to die. And so I finally, like, I wrote him this little note, and I was like, hey Jake, like, I have this, like, you can look it up. But basically, like, I just spilled my guts out to this guy on a
he thought
post-it.
he was getting a love letter or something. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I like passed it over, and then I watched him read it, and I was like really embarrassed. And then he just turned around, like said nothing, and I was like, okay, we'll see what happens, I guess. And he didn't say anything. And then the next day, he came in, looked at me like dead in the eyes, and was like, "Who wants gum?" And just literally like
mm-hmm.
tormented me every single day after that, and did it on purpose.
Yeah, I don't know what to say there
Yeah,
other than Jake.
I
It's such a
know.
Jake move. It's a very Jake move.
Very.
Sorry that happened. Okay, and yeah, wow. So only one teacher helped you. Did anyone? Did you share it with any of your your friends? And was anyone um protective or accepting of you?
I really didn't tell a lot of people. I was really ashamed of it, and
Yeah,
yeah, and it was hard to like I was like hanging out with everyone all the time, and then to all of a sudden just be like, okay, so I have this, I know what's going on now, and just I don't know, I didn't want to like drop
yeah.
this bomb on them or change anything, so yeah, I didn't really tell like really anybody.
Did it ever kind of affect who you maybe would hang out with or what events you would go to?
Yes, 100%. It was really difficult. Like my best friend at the time was she chewed terrible, and I actually
Worse than Jake or better than Jake?
honestly, I want to say like the same level. And like, go figure, it was
Mm,
my best friend, and it just killed me. I was like, every time I hang out with you, it's like worse and worse. So you just kind of like avoid eating situations. Like,
yeah,
oh, I already ate lunch. Sorry. Like, I'll catch you later. Like that type of
yeah.
thing. Yeah,
Did you eventually tell her like later on
I
at some point?
did. I did. I
Yeah,
had to. I sat her down. I was like, listen, like, if we're gonna continue this friendship, I need to be honest with you. And I
yeah.
told her, and she was actually understanding. Is that to say it really changed anything? No, it really didn't.
Mm,
That's been my current struggle, actually. It's like you finally, find it in yourself to tell them and be vulnerable. And they're understanding about it, and it's actually pretty cool. But then they like forget. And it's like, do I have to remind you every single time we eat? Like, I don't even know how to go about that, you know?
yeah, that unfortunately that won't necessarily change and at some point hopefully you don't, but at some point people get jaded and then we stop telling people because it's just like, is it really worth it? We do that
Exactly.
calculation. It's because yeah, I mean it sucks to like yeah be vulnerable and then have that letdown, that kind of high and then low, that relief, and then well, it's not actually going to change after this. Um, it's not again going back to the comment your dad made. It's not like we're expecting the entire world to change. We're expecting, I think, like to be taken as seriously as other conditions. So because I think that just knowing that the other person is aware can reduce our the perceived threat level that our brain seems to be assigning to these noises.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
How about okay, so let's see. You are we kind of into kind of college years now? Like you got out of high school, you know, uh, you made you made it through the Jakes and everybody else. Did you go to college? How did that and did your choice of career path kind of be affected by Misophonia?
I did go to college. I studied illustration for 4 years. The same problems kind of and
Yeah.
challenges. It just followed me there. And I'd love to say it was better or I had a better way of managing it, but I really didn't. It was just, yeah, it was pretty bad.
Did you ever see? a professional at any point? I should have asked, like a therapist, psychologist about misophonia or actually anything else. And you don't have to tell me about like if you had diagnosis for that other stuff. But we're always just kind of curious, um, if you tried to see anybody and or if you tried to see somebody for somebody else, did they even know about misophonia?
Yeah. So I never really saw any specialists, exactly about misophonia, but I was going to a therapist a few months ago, and I actually mentioned it to her because, like, a lot of scenarios I was explaining, I would just be like, and I was so mad at my mom, and like I just felt like she wasn't fully getting the whole story. So I was like,
Mm,
so I kind of was like, okay, so backtracking, and honestly, I was like backtracking the last few months. I need to tell you, like, I have this that kind of affects like my day to day and my
yeah.
relationships. And she was like, oh wow, like this kind of changes a lot of things. And she had never heard of it. She was interested. I don't know if she necessarily was on board with me, but she tried.
Okay. Okay. She tried and that, but that's it. You haven't really has she brought it up since then or no?
No, and I'm actually not even
Okay.
going to therapy anymore for just
Mm.
other reasons. But she actually kind of made like light of the situation actually, and kind of was like, I don't know, kind of making jokes about it too.
Oh no. Are they better than your dad's jokes at least?
I mean, honestly, anything's better. So
Yeah. Mesopotamia. I will remember that one. Okay. So then okay, so actually that gets us kind of for relatively into so what about in like so we talk about friends like relationships that how did has it affected that part aspect of your life, like your personal
yeah.
life?
Oh yeah, it's affected relationships especially because, you know, like example, I was dating this one guy, and I'm not gonna say I broke up with him because of his chewing, but it was maybe a good
You
85%.
could say that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
I mean, eventually I was like, I can't handle it. Like if I have to listen to this like every day, like I'm gonna go
mhm.
insane. Um and I tried, I
Did you
tried.
mention it or did you just
Yeah.
internalize it and then
Um
hightailed it out of there?
oh, I mentioned it more than a good handful of times. And I was really trying, and with him I actually sat him down with the documentary Quiet Please, and I was like, please watch this.
Oh,
Mhm. And
yeah.
I kind of
Okay.
I thought that would help, and I was like, "Listen, like this is real. I need you to watch this." And we did, and he kind of I remember he was like, "This is kind of dumb." I was like, "Okay."
Oh no.
Yeah,
Okay.
so whatever, but it definitely has affected relationships. I remember I had one partner. I specifically remember I was actually in high school, and I had just found out what it was, and he was like eating spaghetti, and it was the
Oh
worst.
God.
And so I was like, "Listen, I just found out about this, and you're killing me." And he like got in my face and did it on purpose. And it was the first time that or the only time actually, that I reacted physically, and like I slapped him like across the
Mm-hmm.
face,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
that was really bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, we don't want to do that, but I mean, when push comes to shove, that's understandable, especially when you're just learning about it. Um, yeah. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Wow. So yeah, obviously, it's like many of us, it's affected kind of every aspect of your life. Has it? I don't know. Switching gears, but has it? You're an illustrator. Has it seeped into your art at all? Like, is this something that you try to express creatively?
Yes and no. I think really in a way only I would recognize. I can go back in my sketchbook specifically,
But
and
that's actually kind of cooler. That
yeah,
that it's something that makes it more personal. I think, and you
right,
can
right.
because I tell people. I mean, this is honestly. I think creatively, Misophonia is a completely uncharted territory. I think it's a totally untouched landscape. So I'm always really interested in how people might be expressing it creatively.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, in my sketchbook I can go and see all the pages that are like dark, like you can just tell I was pushing on this pencil like really hard, and
Yeah.
all that. Those were the times that I was losing it with misophonia. I would just open my sketchbook and start drawing. Those are all the times where I can like feel it when I look at the pages. Like, yeah.
So what would your so obviously like many of us you'd be triggered, and it would takes a while, it takes a while to come down from that level of stimulation. What were some of your coping mechanisms? I think we talked a little bit about maybe earplugs and earbuds. How were you, how were you getting over things or trying
Um,
to,
yeah, I have not been the
other than
best.
slapping people? But
Besides slapping people, let me see. Um,
like breathing, the whole fight or flight thing. But like you probably leave a lot of situations.
yeah, I leave a lot. Sometimes, I mean, recently I was just sitting at my mom's house eating dinner with her, and it's new. I just literally like this month have started sitting at the table with her for the first time in like
Mm,
years because she's living alone. I'm not even living there anymore, and I can't sit on the couch. I can't bring myself to sit across the house from her, and she's like, "It's okay, don't worry." But so I just started sitting at the table, but I sometimes like last week I just stood up so abruptly and just like walked away. But
yeah. Did
yeah,
she know what was going on at this point?
I don't think so. I honestly don't know. And we
Mm,
haven't addressed it either, which might be
hmm.
even worse. I don't know.
It's worse, but it's common. I mean, well,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily. I'm not one to say whether it's worse or not, but it's yeah, I totally get that. Um, what a do you try to put like, I don't know, music in the background or some kind of like white noise, brown noise?
Yeah, we'll put the TV on like pretty
Hmm.
loud in the back, which is like, not even my favorite. I kind of hate it because you're like screaming over
Yeah,
dinner,
yeah,
like, what? But I mean, if it's just quiet, I don't think I could do it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I can almost hear that now. So maybe, um, yeah, okay, and yeah, like in the going out in the real world, like, do you, I don't know, like going shopping or whatever, do you, um, I don't know, do you always like plot a way out of a situation? Do you kind of like check the aisles before you go in? Like, how do you kind of like navigate through life day to day?
I really lately the last few years really it doesn't even affect my day to day in ways that like walking down aisles or being at the grocery store. Nothing's really bothering me. It's more like because I can like roam around freely, whatever. But
Yeah,
I think it's like, and especially I'm sure others can relate. It's like if I'm sitting in the movie theater and it's like, okay, I'm here for the next, 2 hours and now everyone's eating. Like I'm trapped and like I can't really keep getting up. Um, yeah,
yeah.
it's
I mean, I
more
think it
of
feels like
that.
it's our brain. Yeah, it's kind of our brain looking out for us. You know, some kind of trying to protect us.
Yeah.
Which is kind of which I've realized is almost one reason why I think myself and a lot of us are trying to promote like leading with like self compassion, because it's, for me, I feel like it's almost beautiful that this kind of like damaged part of us is, it seems like a damaged part of us is trying to protect us from something that's not there, maybe remembering something from the past, which is an interesting thing to think about, and is getting some traction in therapies, I think. um
Wow, I love
s-
that.
yeah, so yeah, so I don't, yeah, I find that if yeah, like you, like a lot of us experience, like if we're sitting down in a theater and we can't get out, it's somehow more stressful than if we have an exit plan, like an exit in sight. Um, but also, yeah, I mean, I think what I've been trying to do lately more often, I always forget, is just trying to, before I enter a potential situation, is just try to remind my brain that, mm, thank you for trying to protect me. Everything's going to be okay. I'm not going to get killed or strangled or mauled. And that seems to help, like just kind of prepping myself. I don't know if that's something that has occurred to you or not.
It hasn't, but I would definitely like to shift my thinking a bit and
I'm not a
try
therapist, but
that.
it's something I'm just kind of like shooting the shit about some stuff that I don't know, I've been trying
I'll take
recently. So
it. Yeah. Yeah, I'll take it. I'll also say that I've been on all different anxiety meds the last few months or so.
yeah, okay. So I was gonna ask, like, yeah, if you'd kind of delved into any medications for any kind.
Yeah, I had to. I had to. I just I felt like my heart was racing too much during the day. I was like this can't be healthy
Was it
for
being
me.
revved up? You think primarily because of misophonia, or was there other things causing anxiety?
Um, I mean, there definitely were a ton of other factors for sure that, just did not help my situation. But yeah, definitely the misophonia it revs me up. Like I feel like the pulse in my neck is just like it's so like I hear my heart beating. Like I just feel like I'm gonna pass out, and I'm like
Mm,
so hot and tunnel vision. It's terrible. It's like the only way I've tried to describe it to people is just like all of a sudden just picture like the most nervous and anxious and just all the worst feelings you've ever felt ever. It's like all at once and you can't turn it off. You can't do anything about it. And it's just like instant. And you just go from like fine to all of a sudden you're like breaking down and you can't even
yeah.
explain, like it's terrible. um
Do you like
but yeah,
freeze? Because there's fight, flight, and then there's also like a freeze response. Do you just kind of like shut down because your body's so overwhelmed?
yes, that's the worst for me. I freeze a lot, like, and especially I'll be like mid conversation with like my boyfriend, especially, or with anybody. I'll just be like talking, and then I'll be like triggered, and then all of a sudden I cannot engage in this conversation anymore,
And
but
it doesn't have to be. He doesn't even have to be the trigger. It could be somebody around.
oh
Is
yeah,
it?
yeah,
Yeah.
anything. Yeah.
Did in the therapist you were seeing about the anxiety, did they have any recommendations other than medicine, just like maybe breathing exercises at least, or something to kind of like help in those really really sharp moments?
Yeah, she did recommend some like meditation and then as well like also breathing exercises in the moment. Um
It's
and I
sometimes
have
hard to remember in the moment.
yeah,
Well, you can't exactly like start meditating and
right. Well, like okay, let me find
you
my
can breathe. I mean, that's
center.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Let me
try
open my Headspace app and yeah.
my yeah. So, yeah.
Okay. And then yeah. So, what does your current partner think of the situation?
I will say, and I told him this, he's been the most understanding out of all my partners, probably combined.
He's still here. That's a plus. That's
Right? Um, he while I know he does not understand it at all,
right.
like at all, but especially lately, like current, he like does this thing where like he'll be eating and then he just like he's not even eating anymore and then he'll just like smack his lips together like after
Yeah.
done,
Yeah.
and I think it's honestly more of a visual thing for me. um when I see him do it, it's like a visual trigger and I just keep reminding him, like, can you please stop? But he never gets mad or like frustrated or anything. He just every time he's like, oh, I'm sorry, or like, oh, I didn't realize. And he doesn't really make me feel like guilty about it either, which is really
That's a
saying
huge
a
step.
lot.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, well, yeah. But I mean, that's kind of where we're at. If you cannot make us feel ashamed, like that's a plus. That's kind of sad that's kind of where we're at. Where that's
exactly.
but yeah, that's I mean, that's a positive. And you mentioned visual triggers. I was going to ask, like, has this expanded to other senses, like visuals?
Yeah, definitely visual.
Did that start around the same time with your mom being on your mom's lap, or did that something that kind of evolved later?
I think it evolved. Yeah, it
Hmm.
definitely evolved. Yeah, it wasn't always visual, but yeah.
Yeah. Anything? I don't know. Any other senses, like a touch or smell or anything? I'm just curious if like I've started to think recently that um, misophonia is symptomatic of a kind of wider um, sensory issues, and it just happens that hearing seems to be the hardest thing to hide from. You can always close your eyes, you can always, not to touch something, but hearing seems, in many situations, is the hardest thing to get away from. So I'm just curious if there are other senses other than visuals, even that you've noticed any odd sensitivities.
Yeah, I don't know if this is related at all, but I'm very um particular, like my socks, and I've always been this way since I was little. My like this, like the seams that like go over your toes. It's like
Yeah.
something about it. Like when I was little, I would literally like unravel my socks, like just rip holes in them, and I eventually had this huge like yarn ball of just all my
Mm.
socks that I tore apart. But and I still to this day I have it. Like I wear my socks inside out, and if it's not on the right way, I have to take it off, and I can't stand it if it touches my toe in the wrong way. And then sheets, like bed sheets, it's to this day, and it's always been like that. Like if they're like wrinkly under me, like loose, I will like jump out of the bed, like not even to be dramatic, but like I'll like
Yeah.
start crying. Like
Yeah.
I don't know what that is, but so I'm definitely something's going on.
Did you ever, therapist or anybody else mention maybe OCD of any sort or any kind of like other comorbid situation other than obviously anxiety?
Um, no, only because I haven't even really mentioned
Yeah,
any of
you've never really thought
this.
about it. Okay, yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
the whole wrinkly bed sheet thing or socks. You just didn't. You haven't mentioned that.
mm-mm,
Probably
no,
doesn't happen that often, so it's like, why would you remember
right.
necessarily? Yeah. Okay. Cool. I mean, any other like as you're learning about stuff and you're probably listening to this show, are there any kind of therapies or I don't know, anything that sounds interesting, coping mechanisms that you want to explore or you're trying to learn more about?
Um, I want to learn more. I'm open to really anything at this point. I guess just really I've been trying to meditate and do yoga to like, just focus on my breathing and breathing techniques. That's
Yeah, I mean, if you can reduce our stress level, it doesn't take misophonia away, but I think make it can make it happen less often, and I think it'll also help us come down faster. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Obviously, it doesn't help if it's hitting us like 10 times an hour, but um, at some point our body will give up. But yeah, definitely like deep breathing. I think breathing, you're exhaling longer than you inhale, things like that can definitely help.
Right. Yeah. I mean, all that's been great and I'm trying. I want to say the thing that's honestly just helped the most is anxiety meds. Like
Mm-hmm.
they especially this one, it's take as needed. So really, it's just like a little,
Oh,
yeah, and it's just like a little. It's not like anything crazy, but it just. She said it makes you not drowsy, but just kind of chills you out. And in the moment, you just take one of those. In 5 minutes, you're starting to feel better. So,
really? And so
yeah,
you can, I don't know if I necessarily want to mention drug names, but it's one that you can just take as needed, and there's no, well, I'm sure there's got to be some limit as to how many you should take in a day, but
right.
that's interesting. Hmm.
Yeah, it's three a day. So, I save it for three very special moments in the day where I'm like, is it worth it? Is this worth one
Yeah,
of the three? But yeah, I'm not over here, advocating for like meds or anything because it's just my experience, but it's definitely helped me a lot.
gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Um, and do you think it has helped maybe more long term? Is it kind of giving you, is it basically kind of like the misophonia is hitting you the same every day? It's just that the medication is able to, I don't know if is it having like a long term effect? Like it's maybe, you think you'll be slowly be able to wean yourself off of it or,
I hope so. I don't know if it's psychological or what, but I
mm,
do think it's helping like
yeah, okay.
overall and like in the long, like in the grand scheme of things. But yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Um, yeah, interesting. And do you have you met anyone else who has misophonia?
Actually, I haven't physically met, but it was random. It was some girl I knew in college. Um, I ended up
Posted
telling her
something
about
or
it.
oh,
Well, I
okay.
ended up
Yeah.
telling her about it, and then she told me that her cousin had it. And, I never
Mm,
met her or anything, but that was cool. I was like, oh my God, I didn't know anyone else had it at all. So that was
yeah.
cool. And then one of my friends, her roommate in college had it as well. But I never met her. So I just like knew of people having it. But I mean, this is
Yeah.
the first time I'm even talking to somebody who knows what I'm talking about. So this is very cool.
This is your first like misophonia conversation with somebody
Yes.
else who has it. Okay, cool.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
No, yeah, it's exciting. It's always exciting to be on my end too, to kind of like help somebody like verbalize it, and hopefully it helps.
Yeah.
Um, Interesting. Well, yeah, I mean, we're getting to, getting to at least 45 minutes in. But yeah, I mean, anything else you want to share? I guess you're definitely not the only one who has not really talked about it with another person. So, um, anything you want to share about some of the learnings you've had or experiences you've had?
Um, I will say for anybody listening, because I know I've been listening to a bunch of the episodes and they've been very reassuring for me. And, I feel like I'm having a whole roller coaster of emotions just listening to this podcast and all different episodes. I've been crying and
Yeah, they, yeah.
smiling, just everything. It's so relatable and refreshing. But I will say, if anybody is struggling as bad as I was struggling at a certain point in my life, like I like almost I've had so many even past thoughts of ending my life over this.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, it's been a very dark and lonely ride. I once took tweezers and jammed them so far in my ear. I was trying to just take my hearing out, and I thought I did it. Um,
Wow. So, okay. Did it
yeah,
permanently damage your hearing at all, do you think? Or
yeah, I know I did
yeah,
something.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Do you remember what caused that? What was happening that made you like what was the incident and kind
yeah,
of
I
how old
was.
were you?
I want to say I was probably. I know I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like in my teens and maybe like 16, and all that was going on, we were literally I was just eating dinner with my sister, my mom, my dad. That's it. We weren't even nothing super out
Yeah,
of the
yeah, yeah.
ordinary. Yeah, and all I remember is we were eating in silence because nobody wanted the TV on, and
Yeah.
it was unbearable.
Did you did you bring the tweezers out at the table or did you go off and
No, and
yeah,
nobody. I've never even talked about this with anybody, like ever. And
yeah,
I just remember I stood up from the table and like I was really calm about it too. And I just walked into the bathroom and I just took I didn't even think about it. I just took the tweezers and I just jammed them. Like I'm telling you, the whole tweezer was like in my ear, and
yeah,
the pain was like, oh my God. And I just remember I fell on the floor and it was just this like ringing really loud in my ear and it was bleeding. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I haven't done that. I can imagine. I mean, and you said you got up calmly, but I think those are the times when our body is the most in pain because you're probably not even really in control. You just beelined it to the bathroom and did that. Um,
yeah. So that being said, I would just say that, even in the worst moments, like you mentioned earlier, like you're not going to die, you're going to be okay. I do like your perspective of it, of like what you mentioned, like our brains just trying to protect us. I really do like that. That's nice. So I think just reminding yourself, like kind of grounding yourself, like it's
yeah,
okay as bad as it does seem.
it does get better. People who listen to this podcast hear that, you know, you get more triggers, more things start to trigger you as you get older. But as you get older, you become more independent. You're not like you're not necessarily, you're not having dinner with your family every day now. You can kind of like have a little bit more agency on your life. Um,
Yeah.
choose a little
Exactly.
bit how you work, how you live. So yeah, hopefully is very reassuring to people. That freedom can definitely help.
Yes, definitely. Like, you will be more in control, you're not always gonna be
Hmm.
in the classroom setting, so it's okay.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, but I'm also hoping that the more awareness that gets out amongst misophones, that we can you know meet reach those high schoolers so they don't have to feel the way you did on some of those occasions.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Anything else? And any last words you want to share?
Not necessarily anything. I think I kind of
You
got it
covered a
all
lot.
out here.
Yeah, yeah, that was great.
Um,
How did
yeah.
it feel? It kind of flies by, doesn't it? Especially the first time you've talked about it.
Oh my god, this flew by. I was pretty nervous, but this was great, and, I really do hope that others can relate and that it helps somebody because I know this podcast has helped me, like, an insane amount. So, yeah,
Cool.
that's really it.
Well, yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, Lauren.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you again, Lauren. Thanks for sharing your story so openly. I know a lot of people living in silence will relate. If you like this episode, don't forget to leave a quick review or just hit the 5 stars wherever you listen to this show. You can hit me up by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or go to the website misophoniapodcast.com. It's even easier to send me a message on Instagram at Misophonia Podcast. Follow there, or Facebook. Twitter, we're at Misophonia Show. Find and support the show by visiting Patreon at patreon.com/Misophonia Podcast. Theme music, as always, is by Moby. And until next week, wishing you peace and quiet.